Hello and welcome in. It's Always College Football. It is a Sunday edition of Always College Football, and we're glad that you're with us today. It was a terrific day. From start to finish, by the way, you had nonstop action in the noon window. You had incredible games there at 3:30, and then it carried over into a nighttime affair that was unbelievable there in Death Valley. And I know people will look at the final score, but my goodness, the way that game flipped, it was just awesome. That A&M team, if we get that performance in the second half from the Aggies, look out. They will be a handful for anybody. Anybody. That was about as good of a half of football as I've seen all season long against quality competition. So we'll get into that one. We'll get into Alabama's remarkable comeback. We'll get into Texas's remarkable comeback. We'll get into Indiana's domination. And why? I mean, the gap right now between some of the teams in the Big Ten is just unthinkable. I can't believe how wide the gap is. It's crazy. It is a little bit like the ACC of old. You know, the ACC of old, it was Clemson and then everybody else. And then Clemson occasionally would have one or two teams, maybe one or two tough games in conference every year, but it was just an absolute laugher every week, every year. This was like 10 years ago. And then the ACC has kind of caught up and it's become really deep and compelling. Now the Big Ten is looking like the ACC did back in 2016, where it's kind of teams at the top are way at the top, and then teams at the bottom are way at the bottom, and the in-between is okay. We'll see, and we'll talk about it here in just a bit. We saw some shakeups in the G5. We'll talk about that. We also saw another gutsy performance from BYU to remain undefeated. I'm just amazed at BYU, by the way. The more I watch them, the more I'm like, this is a team that just won't die. They will not die. They're in a hole. You think they're done. You think they're in trouble. They're on the road. They're down 2 scores. Jack Trice Stadium's going nuts. Doesn't matter. Flip the script. Finish by scoring 31 of the final 34 points. Call it a day. It's amazing. Really, really fun to watch. It was an exciting day of football. You had a lot of dominant victories. You saw Vandy take care of Mizzou. You saw Virginia survive against North Carolina. You saw Tennessee hammer Kentucky. You saw Louisville knock down Boston College in what was a bit of a strange game there early on. You saw Cincinnati dispatch of Baylor. There's just a lot of action throughout the games. But let's start at the top with A&M and LSU. What a remarkable turnaround from Texas A&M. It was sluggish in the first half. I took LSU in this game because I thought the entire game would look like the first half. Like I thought LSU would junk it up. I thought LSU would force mistakes. I thought LSU would stop the run. None of those things happened in the second half of this football game. But the first half, it's exactly kind of how I thought it was going to play out. And then, boom, Coach Mike Elko tells basically everybody, hey, you know what? You're the better team, boys. If you don't play better football, you're going to let one slip away. And it's the truth. They were the better team. They were the better team all the way throughout. But they're sitting there in a hole 18-14. And then, boom, second half starts. And next thing you know, it's 35-18. And it's done in all 3 phases. I mean, you have a 6-minute part of the game that features a touchdown by Marcel Reed, a 79-yard punt return to the house. I mean, it's 6 minutes, and you almost feel as though all hope is lost. A total second half domination to outscore LSU 35-7 in the second half is ridiculous. And it just goes to show you, under Mike Elko, if you look at how things have gone against LSU, A&M has been completely dominant of the last 2 games against LSU, completely dominant in the second half of the football game. They outscored 66-13 in the last 2 games in the second half. That is remarkable. You look at the defensive line for Texas A&M, they were completely all over Garrett Nussmeier. He had very little time to sit back there and diagnose and look. The offensive line for LSU has been terrible all year, but that defensive line performance was next level. I mean, it was next level. Thought Marcel Reed might have had one of the gutsier performances we've seen from him in the past. Wasn't perfect, wasn't flawless, but man, he makes a lot of plays. His rushing ability, I thought, really kept things difficult on that LSU defense all throughout. How big has the addition been of Casey Concepcion? Showed it there on one of the biggest stages in the sport to go out and to perform like that in several different categories of the game. Amazing. Just an outstanding performance from Texas A&M, start to finish. That second half, and we'll talk about this a little later on this afternoon show, that second half, if we get that from this point forward, if that's what we get, if that's the Aggies that we get, national championship is a real possibility for the Aggies. I really believe that. All right, let's go next to the noon window where Ole Miss goes on the road, knocks off Oklahoma. Now, this was a weird game because in the first half of the football game, it was like, I don't know what's going on with Oklahoma, kind of struggling. I mean, defense didn't look great. Offense didn't look great, just kind of sluggish. And it was a bit surprising, especially considering Oklahoma being back at home, just thought you were going to get a very inspired effort. You got a top 10 team coming to your house. This top 10 team hadn't won a ranked game on the road in Lane Kiffin's tenure. And it was just a sluggish first half from Oklahoma. And then, boom, in the second half, it was just a completely different animal. It was 22-10 at the half. And then, boom, you blink, and all of a sudden the Sooners have the lead after a really solid rally. But game on the line, Trace Bruckler forces a fumble on Isaiah Satania. And next thing you know, it becomes a huge issue because they then go down, strike immediately, kick a field goal, and then it's now an 8-point game. So massive moment in the game because it was going to be a 5-point game with Oklahoma in plus territory. Instead, it was Ole Miss with the ball in plus territory and an 8-point lead. So crazy. I still think there's a lot of things to figure out with Oklahoma. But we'll start with Ole Miss. I thought Ole Miss showed a lot of guts in this performance. It wasn't flawless. They battled. They didn't finish the week before against Georgia. I thought they finished in this game. They had some gutsy 4th-and-1 conversions. One in particular on a little throw to the right-hand side to Daquan Wright, who had a bit of a quiet day. So finding him, the touchdown to Bruckler to kind of stymie the momentum that was created by Oklahoma in the first part of the second half. I thought the defense, too, if you look at the Ole Miss defense, look, they gave up a couple big plays. No doubt about it. They gave up a couple big plays, one on the ground, a couple through the air. They had a couple busts in the secondary. But for the most part, this defense made plays in this game. You get a safety. You get a handful of sacks. You get a handful of pressures. You get a 4th-and-1 stop that was significant there against John Mateer. So I look at just how this defense played. I thought they played very, very opportunistic. They're never going to be a defense that holds you to 220 yards a game, but they are a defense that if they can step up on 3rd down, 4th down, red zone, force field goals as opposed to touchdowns, they have a real chance, I think, of being okay down the stretch, but I still think they have issues on that side of the ball. This was a really good performance, though, considering the level of competition that Ole Miss was going against. This was a good performance offensively. For Chambliss to go for 315, he wasn't flawless. It wasn't perfect. He did miss a couple throws. There were plays left on the field for sure, but you just went against the number 1 ranked defense in the country as far as total defense. Well, that was the first 300-plus yard passing performance that the Sooners had given up this season. Ole Miss did it last year. They were actually the last team to do it. That was with Jackson Dart. So this is a big win. It snaps a 9-game road losing streak against AP-ranked opponents for Ole Miss, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in today's show, a little later this afternoon. Go look at Ole Miss's schedule. Tell me where they're losing. And if you can tell me where they're losing, fine. But you better find 2 because this is a team that's probably going to the playoff if they only lose 1 down the stretch. We'll look at their schedule a little later. They are in a really good spot. Just saying. One other shout out in this game, Trace Bruckler to force a field goal and to force a fumble and to have a touchdown in the same game, his first touchdown at Ole Miss. Pretty impressive. Want to give him a little love as well. So very, very good performance there. Vanderbilt, the 10th ranked Vanderbilt, knock off the Missouri Tigers 17-10. This was, I told you guys last week, or I was on one of the shows. I don't remember what it was. We talked about time of possession, right? We talked about the importance of ball control in this game. Well, I feel like I blinked my eyes 7 times and this game was at halftime. It was 3-3, total defensive stalemate. And the game, I think the first half was about 1 hour and 3 minutes. I mean, it was just one run after another. There were games that were with 7 minutes left in the second quarter when this game was at halftime. It was wild, absolutely wild. Look, the most disappointing part of this game was the injury to Bo Pribula. That was absolutely heartbreaking. Him getting hurt there on the goal line, hoping that the dislocated ankle, it's what it's sounding like it is right now, here's hoping for a quick and full recovery. He's been exciting to watch. Just hated seeing that. Absolutely hated seeing that. But the goal line stand was significant. That was the biggest moment of the game. I mean, it looks like Mizzou is about to take this thing over, about to be in a great spot. The goal line stand completely altered where this game was heading, because you have a little later, you have missed field goal off the upright. You also give up an 80-yard touchdown play to MK Young. So those sequences, this was a game in which it was defined by maybe 3 or 4 plays at most. At most, the plays were made by Vanderbilt. Now, I actually thought that freshman Matt Zellers, who stepped into relief, and I actually thought he played pretty well. I mean, I thought he really did. He did a lot of nice things. The 4th down throw there late was pretty dang impressive. For a guy in that type of spot to play that well, pretty significant. You also get the forced fumble there late in the game. That was enormous. Of course, giving Diego Pavia the opportunity to go down and score that game winner. But there were a couple missed opportunities here. You had holding penalties. It was a bit sloppy by Vanderbilt standards, it felt like to me. Vanderbilt, I always look through the lens of like, they don't make mistakes ever. Well, there was a few. You did have a touchdown wiped out. You had some other things too. So I just think Vandy can maybe be a little bit tighter with their execution going forward, because that was not their A stuff. That was not their best performance, and yet they still found a way to win. As far as Missouri's concerned, that was a gutsy performance, especially under the circumstances, losing your quarterback, but they still couldn't quite get the run game going to where they wanted it to go. Look, Ahmad Hardy had almost 100 yards. Of course, they had a couple mistakes. They had a couple turnovers, and that was the ticket. That was really what it was all about. So hate this for Missouri, but man, Vanderbilt, their 3rd victory over an AP-ranked opponent this year. That's the first time in school history that Vandy's done that. They are now 7-1 for the first time since World War II. And at the beginning of World War II, 1941. So crazy when you think about that. But this was a bit of an ugly day kind of across the board as far as what they did offensively. But shout outs to MK Young, made the one big play of the game. Shout outs to Vandy's goal line defense and stopping Bo Pribula on the 4th down. And then, of course, you got to give a shout out to Matt Zoller. So I thought, thrown into an impossible situation, actually did a lot of really nice things. Let's go next to South Carolina, where Alabama somehow finds a way to flip the script and knock off the Gamecocks. This was a wild game. It really was. This was a wild game, and one where, man, it just felt like it was all South Carolina. I mean, did it not? Like, even from the get-go, you could just tell that the Tide was going to be facing an uphill battle. You could tell from the first snap of the game. Then they made the plays. You know, people have asked me several times, what do you think about Alabama's defense? I said, no, they're pretty good. I think they're pretty good. I think they have some talent, but I think they have playmakers. Like, this team just has playmakers on defense. We've said that last week after the pick 6 at the end of half against Tennessee. Like, this defense might give up yards. They might give up points. They might give up big plays. But my goodness, they're going to make a couple plays in the game as well that could flip the game on its head. It started with a fortunate bounce off the running back into Day-Day Jones's hands. He goes down, scores a touchdown. And you're sitting there, and South Carolina's got it all going, man. I mean, South Carolina is in a really good spot. They got a 22-14 lead. Everything's looking good for them. Bama's offense had struggled throughout most of the game. But my goodness, what a drive by Ty Simpson and this Alabama offense. 14 plays, 79 yards, down the field in 7.5 minutes, finding Jeremy Bernard, then converting the 2-point conversion to Josh Cuevas. Just enormous. Absolutely enormous to get this game knotted at 22. Well, next possession, here it comes again. The Alabama defense that had not been flawless all game long, boom, strip sack of Lenora Sellers, punching the ball out to give their offense an opportunity to go down and win the game in regulation, man. Just enormous plays on the defensive side. Look, I think this game tells you a lot about Alabama's heart. This game tells you a lot about Alabama's competitive character. I think that's the ticket here. They were flawless on a 14-play drive when they absolutely back against the wall had to have it after doing very little offensively for 3.5 quarters. So to go under ultimate pressure and go and display that kind of poise from Ty Simpson, from Jeremy Bernard, amazing. Absolutely amazing. And then defensively, for them to make that final play, that critical turnover that gave Alabama the championship or the opportunity to continue on their quest to win an SEC championship. But there was championship metal on display in this game, man. It was not a good performance. Do not get it twisted. This was not clinic worthy. This was gutsy. And sometimes gutsy in the long term is more valuable than clinic worthy. If everything's too easy, if everything's too simple, knowing that you can kind of taste your own blood after getting punched and then responding. Bama's done that time and time and time again this year. Look, they still got to find a way to be better running the football. They still got to find a way to not allow the offense to suffer for as long as they suffered. And they still got to find a way to continue to get all the weapons involved. Jeremy Bernard was amazing, but there were some missed opportunities here. There were some drops. There were some poor protection issues. So a lot to clean up on the offensive side. But hey, a win is a win in this situation. Take it and run. Bama goes into the bye week sitting at 7-1. They just navigated through a 5-game stretch that was outrageous, outrageously difficult. They went 5-0 in that stretch. Remarkably impressive. Let's go next to one of the bigger upsets of the day where Houston knocks off Arizona State. This was kind of crazy, was it not? I mean, they're in the pregame. All of a sudden, whoa, best player can't go. What's going on? I mean, that was crazy, right? So this is a game, by the way, that showcases how good Willie Fritz is to put together just a Willie Fritz from year one to year two. If you look back at his time at everywhere he's been, whether it's at Tulane or even prior to that, I bet you if we even went back and looked at his numbers way back in the day when he was a coach at the lower levels, and now at Houston, the guy from year one to year two just seems to figure it out. The guy can coach some dang ball. I mean, this guy can flat out coach it. Now, Arizona State, the offense, we've seen a couple times this year where Arizona State has somehow rallied and pulled it off. Just too little too late in this situation. Too big of a hole to climb out of. But if you look at where things were, this was more about Houston, I think, than it was about Arizona State. Very balanced offensive attack. They controlled the clock. They controlled the tempo. They controlled everything from the get-go. And remember, this is not an easy place to go and play. Arizona State had won 10 straight at home, which was top 6 in the country in terms of win streaks in their own building. So Houston quietly navigating throughout this season, sitting there at 7-1 overall, 3-1 in the conference. Now they have that crucial tiebreaker potentially. If everybody loses 2, they have that crucial tiebreaker now against Arizona State. So this is big. But Connor Wigman, this is what he was brought for. To showcase poise, to showcase efficiency, 3 touchdowns, over 200 on the ground. Just a veteran player that has been really playing pretty well all season long. I just don't know if the world has paid enough attention to it. This was a really good plan, both offensively and defensively. I can't wait to watch the tape of it, to be honest with you, because I didn't get a chance to watch all of it. Just got to watch bits and pieces. So really looking forward to diving in on this one and seeing what Willie Fritz did to take advantage of this Arizona State football team. Let's go next to the G5. Memphis knocks off South Florida right after, why doesn't this happen? Memphis, they lay an egg against UAB. Why wouldn't they just rally and play the best game of their season and the best quarter of their season against South Florida the following week? You're sitting there. USF is in a great spot. It looks like the game is over. They're up 31-17. They had just had this long, big touchdown run. It feels like everything is on USF side. And then, boom, Memphis says, hey, guys, we kind of got to have it now. We're pretty much dead if we don't come back and win this game. So let's rally them, score 17 straight, and steal the victory. Pretty amazing. Look, this was really, really, really desperation mode. The ultimate desperation back against the wall situation. Look, fourth quarter, the defense for Memphis did not play well throughout the first 3 quarters of the football game. But the shut out USF in the final quarter was enormous. This has massive implications across the board. Now Memphis, their college football playoff hopes are revitalized. Remember, Memphis also has a win against Arkansas. I know Arkansas isn't great, but neither is Florida, and USF has that win against Florida. So they're getting a lot of credit for that win. Meanwhile, Memphis, yes, a loss to UAB is hard to wrap your head around, but this was an enormous win. Now there's a very, very bit of a logjam at the top. USF, that gives them their second loss. They have their first loss in conference. So still very much alive to make it to the league. This might be a preview of what's going to happen in the American Athletic Championship, but we'll see. But some shout outs in this one. You look at Memphis's defense, tremendous, absolutely tremendous. To play the way they played down the stretch after struggling so much there in the first three quarters and change. So very impressive. We'll talk about the fallout of this and where it's going in the G5 a little later in today's show. So check it out this afternoon, this evening. We will have it for you. Look, Ohio State on a bye. Didn't get to see them as we fly through the top 25. The Indiana Hoosiers, just a calm, clinical demolition. No big deal. The Hoosiers go ahead and score 7 straight possessions, put the game away in an instant. The defense completely dominant. UCLA having just 200 yards total offense. Only 1 third down conversion. Ridiculous. 56-6. Man, the fact that was one of the biggest games in the Big Ten yesterday is crazy. What a beatdown. Credit to Indiana. They are legit. They have been legit. Nothing's changed. Oregon beats Wisconsin. Not the best performance. A bit lackluster in some ways. Will be curious to see where things are with Dante Moore. Definitely need to keep an eye on that. Haven't had a chance to kind of look up medical. Is he good? But of course, to see him go down, exit the game, that's probably the biggest aspect of this game that we need to be watching closely. So we'll keep you posted there. Check in with us a little later this evening. We'll tell you what's going on with him, whether or not something down the road that we need to be concerned about. Georgia Tech, they knock off Syracuse in convincing fashion, and Haynes King probably had his best game of maybe the whole season, maybe of his career. The guy was crazy accurate, had nearly 400 yards of offense, accounted for 5 touchdowns. They are 8-0 for the first time since 1966. That's crazy. Miami in the late night game knocks off Stanford. I guess it was late night for me. We did the 11 o'clock game, so it felt like 2 in the morning when this game was being played, but I think it was probably around 7. Either way, tale of 2 halves. Things didn't look very good for Miami there early on. It was kind of ugly, and then boom, the offense finally found its stride for the first time in several weeks. So hopefully that momentum can be carried over for Miami moving forward. BYU knocks off Iowa State. I'm not picking against BYU anymore. I'm done with it. Absolutely done with it, because I'm sitting there thinking like, all right, this is it. This will be the one. Now I say that, and they go to Texas Tech in a couple weeks, and who knows what's going to happen there. But looking at this game, this was a great win for BYU to create the takeaways, to create and seize momentum, to just hammer down after getting into a 14-0 hole. This team just refuses to go away. They refuse to give up. It does not matter. You could put them in a 4-touchdown hole. It won't make a difference. Like, BYU will punch until the clock is at 0, no matter what. So remarkably impressive. I love BYU. I just love their team. I do. Like, I don't trust them. I'll admit, I don't really trust them because they continue to get in these holes. They continue to get themselves into difficult spots. But I just love them. They're just so dang resilient. It's highly impressive. Texas Tech knocks off Oklahoma State 42-0. Virginia in an interesting one against North Carolina, 17-16 in overtime. Now, if you look at this game, Bill Belichick decides to go for it. I actually like the call. Going for it. Hey, let's win it on the field, boys. The longer this game goes, the more it's going to work against us. We can win it right now. Let's do it. So they go for it. And to have the running back about this far away from the pylon, heartbreaking. And this was finally the UNC defensive effort that you were hoping to get. I mean, this was a very impressive performance to hold a team in regulation that had scored 1 million points a game to just 10 points in regulation. I thought it was progress made by North Carolina, but this was not a great performance from Virginia. But a lot of people were rooting against Virginia yesterday in the ACC because Virginia is still unblemished in the ACC right now. And a lot of teams need some help. They need Virginia to get out of the way so that they can potentially get to the ACC title game. So a lot of people were watching that game with a lot of intrigue, but Virginia showed guts to go and get that win to preserve that unblemished record in the ACC, and they continue to sit right atop the ACC. So it's looking like right now, if it was season's end, you got Georgia Tech against Virginia in the ACC championship game. Who didn't have that matchup in the preseason? That's for sure. Tennessee knocks off Kentucky, convincing fashion. Just another offensive shootout. Joey Aguilar throws for nearly 400. You got a bunch of guys that all at wide receiver finished with over 100. Kentucky, Cutter Boley, got to give him some credit. Thought he did some nice things, but too much firepower from Tennessee as they were able to just completely overmatch a Kentucky team that had struggled a little bit on the offensive side, but the defense was up to the task. That was not the case yesterday. Their offense came to play. The defense did not. Louisville dispatches of Boston College. Finally, the running game is starting to get going a little bit for Louisville, it appears. That's good news and movement in the right direction. Cincinnati knocks off Baylor 41-20. This was their 7th straight game that they've won, which I think was highly impressive what they did defensively. I mean, to see this game and knowing what Baylor's offense is capable of, to see Cincinnati up 24-0 early in this game tells you an awful lot. To hold Sawyer Robertson, to hold that offense in this passing attack in check says a lot about where this team might be heading. Let's look next at Texas, who I don't know how they came back and won this game. They were dead to rights. There's 10 minutes left. They're down 17, 38-21. 17-point comeback was ignited again by Ryan Niblett, who takes it 79 yards to the house with $1:47 to go, forces the overtime, and then Texas gets it done in overtime. Man, gutsy. This was a tough game. This was a very tough game. We'll break it down a little later, but it sets things up for Texas, still very much alive in the SEC championship race. But things will get more difficult as they move forward. A&M still on the schedule. You still have Vanderbilt on the schedule next week. So Texas playing with fire every week, but gutsy. 17-point comeback in the final 10 minutes of that ball game says a lot. Man, very, very well done. Washington knocks off Illinois. Not an upset in my eyes. A lot of people think it was. Washington finally starts to play well on third down. That was huge. And honestly, Illinois, I've just been underwhelmed by them all year. I don't know what to tell you. It's not personal. I watched them and I was underwhelmed. Every time I watched them, this team could easily have 3 or 4 losses. Instead, they were looking pretty good. But I don't know. Washington, I think, has some firepower, and it's always difficult for a team, have to travel that far. Difficult spot. Not surprised with the outcome there whatsoever. And then for the Paul Bunyan Trophy, Michigan handles Michigan State 31-20, 276 total rushing yards. Pretty amazing from Michigan's rushing attack. To see Jordan Marshall and Justice Haynes both go for over 110, Justice Haynes over 150. Very, very impressive. The dagger that Marshall delivered there late in the fourth quarter was very impressive. So Michigan retains the Paul Bunyan Trophy. All right, that'll do it for us here on the Sunday morning edition of Always College Football. Check back with us later this afternoon. We'll give you our 10 takeaways, 10 things we learned from week 9 of the college football season. So check us out on the podcast platform of your choosing. Subscribe to the podcast. You can also check us out on the ESPN College Football YouTube page. So for all of us here at ACF, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, intern Sam, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day. And remember, it's always college football.
Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.